Imagine saying goodbye to income taxes and the IRS. Well, that's what we're talking about today. Hi, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jamie Lynn Drohan, and this is Comcast Newsmakers. This hour's newsmaker is Jim Bennett, Co-State Director of Americans for Fair Taxation. And today we're talking about the Fair Taxation Act. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Why don't you begin by explaining who and what your organization is all about?
Sure. Americans for Fair Taxation is a nonprofit grassroots organization. It's nonpartisan, and it concentrates on one issue, and the purpose is to educate the public about the Fair Tax Act.
I see. And your role as co-state director, what do you do?
Is to promote the Fair Tax Act in New Jersey. The Fair Tax, in a nutshell, is a bill in Congress with 64 sponsors in the House and 5 sponsors in the Senate. And with the commitment of 9 presidential candidates that if the bill reached their desk, they would sign it. And what the bill does is it replaces income taxes of all kinds, payroll taxes, and death taxes, and the Internal Revenue Service with a progressive national retail sales tax on all U.S. consumption without exception, but once and once only. And it has a provision to make it fair to the poor, and it gets the government the same number of dollars that the government derives from all the taxes that it replaces.
I see. Well, Jim, let me jump in here a second. Let's break it down for our viewers. What does it mean to our viewers?
Well, for the individual, there would be huge benefits. First of all, people take home their entire paychecks. They'd be able to save with untaxed dollars for education, for a home, for retirement. They wouldn't pay capital gains tax on their homes when they sell, and they would pay down their mortgages with untaxed dollars. But perhaps more importantly, individuals get to choose when they pay tax and how much tax they pay through the purchasing decisions that they make.
I see. And what type of feedback have you received from politicians?
Politicians are usually somewhat wary because it's a paradigm change. But the politicians who have co-sponsored the Fair Tax Bill have seen grassroots support. And that's what caused at least one of them, a Democrat from Oklahoma, to get on board.
I see. And how did this whole idea come about?
Well, there were a bunch of Texas businessmen who sat in on board meetings of companies, and they found that they were spending more than half their time talking about taxes instead of about business. And they thought, what a waste this is. If they could spend their entire time talking about business, they could make goods and services that are more responsive to the wants and needs of consumers and are more competitive in the world market.
I see. And this is not something that's just going to affect New Jersey. It will affect the entire country. Why should our Comcast Newsmaker viewers care about this?
Because there are several things wrong with the tax system the way it is today. First of all, our taxes today punish productivity, they punish thrift, and they punish effort. Comptroller General of the United States, David Walker, has said that if we want to avoid a fiscal crisis in the very near future, we have to improve our personal savings rate, and that all starts right down at home.
I see. And well, tell our viewers a little bit about this book here, the Fair Tax Book. What is this all about?
That's a book that was written by radio talk show host Neil Bortz out of Atlanta, Georgia, and co-authored by John Linder. And that's probably done more than anything to spread the word and popularize the fair tax until it became a campaign issue in the presidential debates.
And where can our viewers go for more information? I understand there's a website, fairtax.org.
There is, www.fairtax.org. The website has a lot of information on it, and it has the name of local New Jersey people whom they can contact if they'd like to get active in it.
Jim, why don't you explain to our viewers, do you think this act really has a chance?
I think it has a great chance. It already has 64 sponsors in the House. And in fact, presidential candidate Mike Huckabee has made the fair tax a central theme of his campaign. He came in second in the Iowa straw polls. Now, we're nonpartisan, and we don't promote
well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but thanks for joining us, Jim. This hour's newsmaker has been Jim Bennett, Co-State Director of Americans for Fair Taxation. I'm Jamie Lynn Drohan for Comcast Newsmakers.
This question. absolutely support the fair tax, and part of the reason is the current system is one that penalizes productivity. A recent poll showed that more Americans fear an audit of the IRS than they do getting mugged. And the reason is getting mugged isn't as painless as an audit from the IRS. And the reality is, if we could have the fair tax, you take $10 trillion parked offshore, bring it home. You rebuild the Made in America brand. You free up people to earn money, to work. You don't penalize them for taking a second job. You don't penalize them for investing. You don't penalize them for savings. Today, our tax system doesn't need a tap of the hammer, a twist of the screwdriver. It needs a complete overhaul. And what the fair tax does, it ends the underground economy. No more illegals, let me, if I may, no more illegals, no more gamblers, prostitutes, pimps, and dope dealers will be able to escape the tax code. It's the single greatest thing that will help this country have a revitalized economy.
Governor Romney.
Combs, earlier today, Sean spoke to radio talk show host Neil Bortz about the big fair tax rally in Atlanta tonight and about his new book written with Congressman John Linder and just released in paperback.
And joining us now, nationally syndicated radio talk show host, #1 New York Times best-selling book, huge rally tonight, fair tax. Neil Bortz, tell our audience we could literally eliminate the IRS and the income tax.
Well, we can. We eliminate business taxes, personal income taxes, estate tax, capital gains taxes, Medicare tax, Social Security tax. All of these taxes show up eventually in the price of everything you buy. The embedded taxes in every car, every house, every can of soft drink that you buy, amounting to about 22%. So we get rid of all these taxes, we take the embedded tax out of everything we buy, we replace it with a retail sales tax on the final retail sale of all goods and services. It's revenue neutral, and we don't have to worry about April 15th anymore.
So in other words, if you make $50,000 a year, you don't make $33,000, you make $50,000.
No, you make $50,000. If you're under the fair tax, if you sign a contract at a $50,000 a year salary, well then each one of your 26 paychecks is 1/26 of $50,000. There's no withholding.
How is the IRS gone?
Well, the IRS is gone because there's no more withholding. They don't have anything to do. The IRS will stick around for a while to collect the past due tax that's owed at the time we implement the fair tax. Can't let those people off the hook. But then they're gone. I mean, there's no tax on your income. You pay tax when you consume. When you invest or save, you do not pay tax.
Right. Whatever you think about the level of growth of government, we have a certain level of things that we expect from the government.
Yes.
How is this revenue neutral?
The fair tax was designed, by the way, this is the first tax reform idea ever completely designed by the private sector, by economists at places like MIT and Harvard, by businessmen, not by politicians. This is not a good plan for politicians. It takes power away from them. But they looked at our economy, they looked at the consumption levels, they said, this is how much money the federal government takes in tax revenue right now. What would the fair tax rate have to be to match that?
And it is?
It would have to be just about equal to the embedded tax in our goods and services now. The embedded tax is about 22%, the fair tax would be 22 or 3%. So a $10,000 car would still cost about $10,000.
You always hear the words tax cuts for the rich. How would the fair tax help or hurt the middle class or poor people in America?
I think this is the beauty of the whole plan. People say, well, you have to exempt food, you have to exempt medicine. No, what you do is you take the Commerce Department poverty statistics for a family of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, whatever. You figure out what that family has to spend a year to buy the basic necessities of life. They're going to be paying the sales tax on that. That makes it highly regressive. So at the beginning of every month, you issue that family a credit or a check, however it works, equal to the fair tax, the sales tax they would be expected to spend that month. So if you're at the lower end of the income scale, barely making ends meet for your family, you will have no federal tax liability whatsoever, no Social Security tax, no withholding, no nothing.
All right, we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
We know how difficult it is to get change in Washington. What are the chances that we literally eliminate the income tax, eliminate the IRS? What are the chances that happens?
I think the chances are excellent if the people of this country learn about the fair tax plan, either from the book, the Fair Tax book.
#1 bestseller.
#1 bestseller, or if you don't want to spend the money, fine, go to fairtax.org and the details are all there.